Life is all about mind over matter, which also happens to be today's theme. Here is my story of how I became the walking violinist, from an artist that used to sit down like this and play like the traditional classical Indian music, and how I overcame these challenges with pure willpower. Mind over matter. I was only 3 when my father introduced me to the violin, and in fact, it was this very violin. I remember sitting close up in front of him and holding the fingerboard and not letting him play, and I named this violin Happy. So he started teaching me at the age of 3.5 with a full-sized violin. This now may look like pretty small to you, but at the time, it was huge. That's how it was when I was around 5.5, 6, when I gave my first classical program. The violin was much bigger than me. This was a very traditional style of violin playing, where the violinist sits down and performs the violin on the floor. And this violin is held in place basically at 2 places. One is your leg, and one is either your shoulder here, or some people also hold it with their chin. Because what happens is when you play the violin, you have a lot of slides that need to happen. So when you play, you have to slide your hand up and down for something known as gamakas that we have in Indian classical Carnatic music. And hence, the instruments needs to be supported on both corners. This was me at 6. The violin was a full-size one, and I gave my first solo concert at 5.5, and this, I think, was my second concert. And you can see that this is the exact same violin. But I had to overcome a lot of obstacles because I was going to school and I had to practice a lot. And that, again, was all in the mind, because it was all about time management, and also Carnatic music needed a lot of time and a lot of practice you need to give to that kind of music. By the time I was 10, I was performing classical shows all around. But still, this required me to sit on the floor in a cross-legged manner, playing the violin. I received many awards and accolades for my music, and I was always a soloist. A soloist is a person who's the main artist on stage and not an accompanying artist. And in Carnatic classical music, we have accompanying artists as well as main artists, and I was always a soloist because that is what my guru and my father always wanted me to be. I was never trained to stand up like a Western musician and perform. Next came fusion music. I was always exposed to different genres of music, and I always had an iPod in my ear since day one. And I always believed that listening to different kinds of music gave me a lot of exposure, and my parents never said you shouldn't listen to a certain kind of music. This helped me to pick up other forms of music, and by the time I finished 10th grade, I was playing different popular songs that resonated with my generation of people. But still, I was playing the violin like this, and I had a mic that was miking the violin. Smoke on the Water, Summer of '69, and all these Bollywood songs, my friends asked me to play. I could play on the violin by just listening to it. I was picking it up by ear. I was super popular with my age group people, and my uniqueness was giving a classical touch in all of this. So I used to take Bollywood and English songs and give my touch. So this is similar to you have pastas and pizzas that are made in India, but then you have our masalas that are added. I was in college in 2008, and I think 2005 was when YouTube launched. And it was not very popular at that time. And I used to see a little bit of fusion and other things that people were doing. And something like this was what I was doing, but I was still sitting on the floor or sitting on a chair. And this was a short clipping that I'm just going to show you of me playing the violin in a cross-legged way, how I was taught before, and playing the violin in college. I was asked to play in a band at this time. And when I was asked to play at the band this time, the requirement was that I stand up and play. And I was a classical Carnatic musician. I did not know how to do that, so I was sitting on a chair. And you might think this is funny, but I was never trained to stand and play the violin. As I told you before, it needs two places of support. Again, here I had one support here, and I performed. Another major shortcoming was that I was still using a traditional mic for my violin. I could not be mobile, and I also remembered one of these violinists who was performing on the radio. So when I heard him on the radio, I don't remember who it was, but his violin tone was something that was very, very soothing. And I was so young, we were going in a car, all friends together to college, and I heard this. And it was like something I never heard before. In 2010, I did a lot of research, and I was exploring new ways to mic the violin. Because this mic has its own limitations when you keep it in front. There's an air gap between the mic and the violin, and you're not able to give out the entire sound that the violin makes through this mic. And I was still sitting down and performing. And there were not many shops in India that even sold these products, and the good violins or the good technology was not available in India. So after a lot of trial and error, I found a very basic way. In fact, I took the usual headphones and I put it inside the violin, right here, and I connected it to the mic input, and somehow it worked. So that was my very first way of miking the violin, and then I found a very basic pickup mic. That was the first time in 2011 that I heard of a pickup. Started giving a lot of shows with this pickup, but still it had a lot of flaws and I was not satisfied. Now there were three things. One is my violin tone, one is how am I going to mic this, and third one, can I stand up and play? This all changed when I went to the USA in 2012. I spent close to 8 to 10 hours at a guitar center looking at every possible way that I could do all of this. And in my mind, I always knew that I could do it, because it was not that I could just go on YouTube and search how to do it like how we can do it today. It was something that I needed to know, I needed to think about it, and then say, what happens if I have a pickup here, a preamp there, and then how does the sound actually come out? So this was me starting fusion music, and this was me with this exact violin in 2012. So in 2014, we made a trip to Europe where my dad and me saw a street musician play, but he did not have a mic. We didn't know how his tone was, and he was just moving a little bit here to there. So in around 2013, I started standing up and playing, similar to what you see here. And after which, I got inspired by that one moment that I saw. We were going in a car, and we saw the street musician, and Dad told me, I was like, can we do this? So Dad told me, if you can not compromise on the classicism, as well as play Carnatic music while you're walking, then you do it. So this is something what I did. So I still played the curves, but when I was walking, it didn't happen overnight. To do this took close to 3 to 4 years. So by the time I did this, a lot of research had gone into what sound I use, what tech I use. This is not only the violin. It's the pickup, it's the technology that I use, and it's the technique. So many people use something called the chin rest as well as a shoulder rest, but I don't even use a shoulder rest. So my point of support is only this. So I had 2 points of support, and now I had to just do it with this, and that's the technique that I developed. Now, I was satisfied. I got my sound, I got the violin, I got whatever I needed, and I was wireless. But then it needed a lot and a lot and a lot of effort. And my performance started becoming super unique, like the one you see right now. And I started the Walking Violinist in 2014 end. Around 2014 end. And I perfected the art in around 2015 or so. And I could freely move around, and this was not limited to a single place. You might again find this funny that a violinist you might see in Western countries is always standing and playing. But for me, from where I was to where I am, needed a lot of my, there was a lot of hardship that went into this, and it was, again, mind over matter. As I kept moving ahead, I also kept up with tech and upgraded my wireless units, pickups, and today I have it absolutely streamlined. I'm just going to show you a small sample. So are you all going to join me to clap along with me as I play the song? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our minds are the most powerful tool that we can harness for all levels of success in life. Our thoughts shape who we are and who we will become, as well as influencing our physical well-being and our emotional state. The power of the mind is a tool we are still discovering, and we're just beginning to unleash it. The capability that we possess is far greater than most of us can ever begin to imagine. Thank you.